හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Wednesday, the 27th of September 2023. IMF update. IMF says that more work needs to be done for economic stability. Confirms that there's no timeline in place for the second tranche.
Fixed timeline. As I mentioned, we need two important things to be satisfied. We need to...
A million joys. Sri Lanka welcomes its 1 millionth tourist as tourism for 2023 explodes.
We have achieved 1 million tourists up to now, and also the target set of 1,550,000 will be superseded.
Inflation dropping. CCPI-based inflation rate further down to 1.3% from 4% a month earlier. Rainy rains. Expect more rains in the upcoming days as southwest monsoons are now in full force.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟම ඇති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to today's edition of AdaDerana's English News. First at 9, I'm Jonathan Benedict. Let's take a look at our headlines this evening. The International Monetary Fund Mission Review Team currently in Sri Lanka confirmed that to go ahead with the debt program, it is critical that Sri Lanka comes into agreements with the external creditors of the country in line with the approved debt program. Mission head Peter Brewer said that discussions were also held regarding fiscal and policy reforms, adding that further discussions will take place on tax reforms and implemented reforms according to the timeline of the program. When asked about the second tranche of the $2.9 billion program, however, Brewer said that currently there is no timeline to determine when the second tranche would be released. An International Monetary Fund team is currently in Sri Lanka to engage in talks with the Sri Lankan officials for the first review of the ongoing IMF Extended Fund Facility arrangement approved in March earlier this year. The second tranche, which amounts to $330 million, will be unlocked upon Sri Lanka successfully completing the upcoming progress review. During the visit, the team led by Peter Brewer and Masahiro Nozaki met with President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday. During the visit, the mission discussed additional fiscal efforts that will be critical to ensure successful revenue mobilization and progress on debt restructuring, whilst noting the ongoing discussions with both foreign and domestic creditors. The mission stressed that achieving timely restructuring agreements with creditors in line with the program targets by the time of the first review is essential to restoring debt sustainability. In a press briefing held today, the mission said that Sri Lanka is showing tentative signs of improvement, with inflation moderating, the exchange rate stabilizing, and the central bank rebuilding reserve buffers.
The people of Sri Lanka have shown remarkable resilience in the face of enormous challenges. Sri Lanka has made commendable progress in implementing difficult but much needed reforms. Inflation is down from a peak of 70% to today 1.3%. Gross international reserves increased by $1.5 billion between March and June this year, and shortages of essentials have eased. But full economic recovery is not yet assured. Growth momentum remains subdued, with real GDP contracting 3.1% in the second quarter this year on a year-on-year basis, and high-frequency economic indicators still sending mixed signals. In this challenging environment, the authorities have undertaken important steps on monetary and fiscal policies, as well as implemented structural reforms to address the ongoing economic crisis. More work still needs to be done to sustain the reform momentum and put the economy on a path towards lasting recovery and economic growth.
Have you mentioned that the IMF is unsatisfied with the government of Sri Lanka's tax collection system so far?
Tax collection gets an important pillar of the program because it's important to sustain the essential expenditures of the government. And these expenditures need to be sustained with an appropriate amount of revenues. In Sri Lanka, there's a big gap between these two. Expenditures are of the order of 19% or so of GDP. Revenue is in the order of 9% of GDP or so, and that gap needs to be filled. The reforms in this regard already started last year with significant tax policy reforms that essentially reversed some of the large tax cuts that had taken place in 2019. But that by itself isn't enough for Sri Lanka to bridge that gap mentioned and to step away from being one of the countries with the lowest tax takes in the entire world. And so discussions in that regard continue, ensure that the objectives of the program can be reached. And what we need is a clear path towards restoring debt sustainability. For the IMF to be able to go ahead, it needs to convince itself that debt sustainability can be restored. And to do that, we need to convince ourselves that discussions, negotiations that will result in debt treatments that will essentially be in line with the debt targets that we had set at the beginning of the program in March. When these debt targets can be reached, that is when we assess that debt sustainability can be restored. And
when is likely to the second tranche be disbursed if everything goes well?
There is no fixed timeline. As I mentioned, we need two important things to be satisfied. We need to have reached agreement on a set of policies and reforms that will allow us to go forward with the understanding that the objectives of the program can be reached. So now we've discovered there was a little bit of a shortfall in one area during this year, so we're looking to try and find ways to address that shortfall and compensate for it. Working in a direction of having agreement on these policies is one important prerequisite. And then the other one is in the area of debt. Is there a stable path towards debt sustainability, reaching agreements with creditors that will help restore debt sustainability in Sri Lanka? And so when these two conditions are met, we can go forward.
Bloomberg reports that certain members on the Committee of Sri Lanka's official creditors are pushing to reach a deal to restructure the nation's debt without the participation of China. Bloomberg stated that this is a move with potential implications as to how wealthier nations handle financial stress in the developing world. Further, Bloomberg, quoting sources who had asked to remain anonymous as the discussions are private, reported that the members want the group of major creditors, including the US, Japan and India, to sign a memorandum of understanding with Sri Lanka around the time the International Monetary Fund and World Bank meetings are scheduled for next month in Marrakesh in Morocco. In other news, Chairman of Sri Lanka's Tourism Development Authority, Priyantha Fernando, says that the island nation, who welcomed its 1 millionth tourist this year yesterday, is well ahead of the target set for 2023. He made these comments while addressing an event organized by the Ministry of Tourism to celebrate World Tourism Day, scheduled today. While highlighting the resilience showed by the Sri Lankan tourism sector despite the challenges as remarkable, the United Nations Development Programme country representative Azusa Kuboto said that they further expect Sri Lanka to soon adopt the tourism policy that was prepared with the assistance of the UNDP. An event organized by the Ministry of Tourism and Lands to celebrate World Tourism Day was held in Colombo today, with the participation of the country representative of the United Nations Development Fund, Azusa Kubota, and Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, Priyantha Fernando.
Everyone sees a lot of potential for the South Asian region, and it's up to all of us to help ourselves to the deserving share and place Sri Lanka on the global map. As we all know, today tourism is playing a major role and making a major contribution towards our economy. We are the second largest foreign exchange earner for the economy right now, and hopefully with the support of all stakeholders, we can make it the largest foreign exchange earner for the economy by 2027. Looking at the targets that we have set for 2023, we are ahead of the targets. We have achieved 1 million tourists up to now, and also the target set of 1,550,000 will be superseded.
Despite the recent successive challenges faced by the industry in Sri Lanka, starting from the devastating Easter Sunday attacks, the COVID-19 pandemic, to the economic crisis, I have to say, really the resilience that this tourism industry has demonstrated is remarkable. As the world embraces green thinking at this time of economic recovery efforts, the objective of the tourism sector development cannot simply about increasing the number of inbound tourists. It has to be about enhancing their experience through green lenses by promoting a responsible, eco-conscious paradigm for the sector and building a stronger eco-brand, green brand around the sustainable agenda for Sri Lanka. Speaking of nature assets, did you know that Sri Lanka is one of the 36 biodiversity hotspots in the world? With its unique ecosystems and endemic flora and fauna. Sri Lanka's strength lies in its biodiversity, and should we lose it, we will lose the value of it, authenticity of it, and forever. Before too late, we must invest in biodiversity management, and in turn, the return on investments will be exponential and long-lasting. Wellness tourism in Sri Lanka could further be enhanced by leveraging the country's unique biodiversity and promoting its spice gardens and herbs to create awareness of authentic Ayurvedic treatments, healthy Sri Lankan cuisine, and its associated health benefits, and all the smiles you receive here in Sri Lanka. And these nature-based assets can shape and drive the rebranding of Sri Lankan tourism if they are coupled with progressive and innovative green investments. Our first involvement in this sector started back in 2018, providing technical support to initiate the National Sustainable Tourism Certification Scheme under the Biodiversity Finance Initiative, in short BioFin, and to promote tourism sector investments in biodiversity conservation and sustainable development. Sigiriya, no surprise, has been selected as the inaugural destination to be developed as a sustainable tourism destination. UNDP also provided technical support to draft the national tourism policy and conduct stakeholder consultations and validation workshop under the guidance of the Tourism Ministry. So it is truly our sincere hope that the policy will be fully adopted soon and implemented in the near future as a catalyst.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe left the island to address the Berlin Global Dialogue commencing in Germany tomorrow. During his visit to Germany, President Wickremesinghe is expected to meet with prominent figures such as German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, key ministers, members of the German Parliament, and representatives from the Association of the German Chambers of Commerce and Industry. President Ranil Wickremesinghe left for Germany this morning to participate in the Berlin Global Dialogue commencing tomorrow. The dialogue, which will conclude on the 29th of September, is a global high-level forum that gathers influential decision-makers and leaders from the realms of politics, business and society, alongside young visionaries. In the Leaders' Dialogue session, which is the inaugural event of the dialogue, President Wickremesinghe will be delivering the opening remarks, where he is scheduled to delve into discussions on pressing geopolitical and economic challenges. During his stay in Germany, President Wickremesinghe is scheduled to meet with prominent figures such as the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, key ministers, members of the German Parliament, and representatives from the Association of German Chambers of Commerce and Industry. As part of the working visit, Chief of Staff and National Security Advisor to the President, Sagala Ratnayaka, who will be accompanying the head of state on his visit, is scheduled to engage in discussions with Foreign and Security Policy Advisor to the German Chancellor, Jens Plotner. Additionally, Foreign Secretary Aruni Vijayawardena will meet with her counterpart at the German Foreign Office, State Secretary Dr. Thomas Bagger. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, President Ranil Wickremesinghe's visit to Germany is expected to foster important diplomatic ties and discussions on global issues of significance. The Department of Meteorology stated that due to the active southwest monsoons over the island, prevailing rainfall in the southwestern part of the island is likely to continue for a few more days. Issuing a weather advisory, the department noted that heavy showers above 100 millimeters are likely at some places in the western and Sabaragamuwa provinces and in the Galle and Matra districts. Showers or thunder showers will occur at several places in the Uva and eastern provinces during the evening and at night. At the moment, several areas of the island are currently experiencing heavy rainfall with either constant or intermittent rains. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says that if all 225 members of parliament unite and come together, a country free from alcohol and drugs can be built. He said this during the meeting of the Select Committee of Parliament to control and eradicate the rapidly spreading drug menace today. The Select Committee of Parliament to control the rapidly spreading drug menace in Sri Lanka, chaired by Public Security Minister Derana English, met with the participation of the opposition leader Sajith Premadasa.
දේශපාලන වේදිකෙන් තොරව සියලුම ගරු මන්ත්‍රීතුමාලා එකතු වුණා රෙසලූෂන් එක පාස් කරන්න EIP ලවුන්ජ් එක පාවිච්චි කරලා මොරින් රත්තරන් ගෙන්න කටයුතු කරපු පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරයා ඒකමතික යෝජනාවක් අපිට හැකිනම් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ 225 දෙනාටම එකඟ වෙන්න පැහැදිලිව රටක් හැටියට අපි මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය මත්පැන් දුම්වැටි භාවිතයෙන් මුදවුණු රටක් හැටියට ඒ ඉලක්කය කරා යෑම සඳහා අපි 225ම එකතු වුණයි කියන කාරණාව එකක්. සිගරට් ටැක්ස් එක හරියට ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්නේ නැහැ මේ රට. ප්‍රමාණාත්මකව වැඩි විය යුතු ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි වෙලා නැහැ. ඇයි සිංගප්පූරුවේ වගේ රටක ඇයි ඩ්‍රග් යූස් එක නැත්තේ? තාමත්ම තදබල නීති රීති පද්ධතියක් තියෙනවා. දැන් මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය ජාවාරම් කරුවා එළියේ හිටියට වැඩිය ප්‍රබලයි ඇතුළට ගියා. ඇතුළට ගිහිල්ලා බදු ගෙවන්නන්ගේ සල්ලි වලින් සාතු සප්පායම් වෙලා. තුලේ යම්කිසි රැකවරණයක් තුල එළියට හිටියටත් වැඩිය ඇතුළට ගිහිල්ලා බිස්නස් එක හොඳට කරනවා. ඉතින් මේක මහ විහිළුවක්. මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය පනතනේ පිළිබඳව රටක් හැටියට මේට වැඩිය කොන්ද කෙලින් තියෙන තීන්දුවකට අපි ප්‍රවේශ කරනවා.
Inflation deflating. Business news and more on that after the short break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන්කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back. The Department of Census and Statistics said today that inflation is measured by the Colombo Consumer Price Index have further reduced to 1.3% in September from 4% in August. With that being said, though, the central bank held interest rates steady last week, stating that the prevailing tight monetary stance was crucial to taming still high inflation and restoring economic stability. The Department of Census and Statistics today issued inflation figures per the Colombo Consumer Price Index. Accordingly, the Colombo-based inflation rate eased to 1.3% in September from 4% in August. The year-on-year inflation in the food group reduced to minus 5.2% during September from minus 4.8% recorded in August, while the non-food group inflation subsided from a rate of 8.7% in August to 4.7% in September. For the month of September, the contribution to inflation by food commodities on a year-on-year basis was minus 1.78%. The contribution of non-food items was 3.1%, which was mainly due to increases in value change in the categories of housing, water, gas and other fuels, with a contribution of minus 2.18% and restaurants and hotels minus 0.16%. The all-share price index closed in green today as a result of price gains in counters such as Commercial Bank, Sampath Bank and CT Holdings, with turnover crossing 1.3 billion rupees. Similar behavior was witnessed in the S&P SL20. High net worth and institutional investor participation was noted in Melster Corp Nations, Trust Bank and Haley's. This meant that the all-share price index closed at 11,335.61 points, while the more liquid S&P SL20 closed at 3,197.72 points. Mixed interest was observed in John Keel's Holdings, CT Holdings and Distilleries, whilst retail interest was noted in UB Finance Company, Brown's Investment and Haley's Fabric. Foreign participation in the market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, whilst the sector index gained 0.39%. The food, beverage and tobacco sector was the second highest contributor to the market turnover, whilst the sector index edged up by 0.05%. With that, let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies around the world. Market experts confirmed that the review of the International Monetary Fund and the release of the second tranche of the IMF bailout loan is crucial for the secondary market in the coming week. Our market outlook expert Damien Ryan of Capital Alliance sheds more light on this in our next segment, Economic Outlook.
The Colombo Consumer Price Index for the month of September, which monitors the general price level increases, was published today. The point-to-point inflation reduced from 4% in August to 1.3% in September. The reduction is mainly due to the base effect. Even though the point-to-point inflation has reduced, the price of goods and services on a month-on-month basis has increased to 0.9%. The month-on-month increase is mainly due to the adjustment in water tariff and the increase in rice prices due to the adverse weather conditions. We also saw the global oil prices increasing over the last week due to the increase in the global oil prices. Due to the increase in the Brent prices, we expect the fuel prices in Sri Lanka to increase by about 10 to 15 rupees over the next month. But we do not expect this to be a major concern for the central bank since the point-to-point inflation is still below their target band of 4 to 6%. But on a month-on-month basis, the increase is due to the short-term supply-side issues, which do not pose as a major concern because of the demand-side issues. The exchange rate remained stable over the last week. On the interest rate front, we have seen the secondary market interest rate remain relatively stable over the last week, with the treasury bill rates reducing at the last week's bill auction, mainly due to the low offered amount compared to the previous weeks. The IMF's review with regards to the support program and the release of the second tranche of their funding is critical for the market interest rates over the next week.
Now to corporate affairs. The Information and Communications Technology Agency of Sri Lanka, or ICTA, announced the upcoming launch of the Electronic Revenue License System ERL 2.0 that is scheduled for release on the 3rd of October 2023. Officials confirmed that facilitating the transition to ERL 2.0, the issuance of revenue licenses at all provincial motor traffic department head offices and divisional secretariat offices across the country will be temporarily suspended on the 27th of September and the 2nd of October 2023. Meanwhile, Axiata Digital Labs, the technology hub of Axiata Group Berhad, announced the opening of 2 new offices in Indonesia and Malaysia. With that, let's take a look at the corporate world next.
The Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka announced the upcoming launch of the Electronic Revenue License System ERL 2.0 that is scheduled for 3rd of October 2023. This transformative system, developed in collaboration with the Provincial Department of Motor Traffic, is scheduled to be launched initially in 8 provinces, including the Northwestern, Southern, North Central, Central Sabaragamuwa, Eastern, Northern and Uva provinces. To facilitate the transition of ERL 2.0, the issuance of revenue licenses at all provincial motor traffic department head offices and divisional secretariat offices across the island will be temporarily suspended today and 2nd of October 2023. Additionally, the online system for obtaining revenue licenses will also be temporarily suspended until midnight of October 6, 2023. Meanwhile, Axiata Digital Labs, the technology hub of the Axiata Group Berhad, announced the opening of 2 new offices in Indonesia and Malaysia. By establishing a stronger presence in Indonesia and Malaysia, Axiata Digital Labs aims to forge partnerships with local telecommunication service provider, businesses and associations. In the meantime, Sri Lanka's National Development Bank has been appointed a member of the Lanka Pay USD online payment system. The Sri Lanka Interbank US Dollar online payment system is yet another payment product introduced by Lanka Pay with the aim of assisting the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and the economy by curtailing the foreign exchange outflow from the country when processing US dollar transfers.
That's all the news I have for you for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow at the same time for more up-to-date English news. For now, this is Jonathan Benedict wishing you a good night. Stay safe, have a responsible and a blessed long weekend ahead.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.